Michael, thank you so much for coming on to Startup Steroid today. We met a couple of weeks ago, and I've been really looking forward to this conversation because I want to learn. I want to sort of dig into your mind and learn about your process and how you work with startups. So
Sure.
this should be really exciting. Um, just by way of introduction, I know you're the sort of the head of the Wealth Capital Network. You work with a lot of high-profile investors, high-profile individuals, athletes, things of that nature. So obviously, what you do is very important, and the service you provide is extremely important.
Mhm.
But beyond that, please introduce yourself. Tell the viewers a little bit about your background.
Yeah, so as you mentioned, obviously my name is Michael Lerma. I'm the managing director of Wealth Capital Network. And basically, Wealth Capital Network is really a sort of an investor business network where we focus on working with family offices. As you mentioned earlier, we work with professional athletes in different capacities. And we also, we work with, angel investment groups like yourself or angel investor groups. And the idea behind that is to really create an opportunity or platform for early stage companies and really fund asset managers to introduce them to, depending on what they're looking for, certain types of investors. So we're really highly curated organization that tries to create introductions that generate business and also investment opportunities. So in a nutshell, that's kind of who we are and what we do. Just to give you a kind of a 30-second overview or 30,000-foot overview of how I got started in this. My career started in New York, working for a couple of Wall Street firms back in the day, I guess you could say, and TIAA and consulted with Goldman Sachs for a while and Chase. And I decided I wanted to get into, believe it or not, a career shift. I wanted to get into actually sports marketing and management. And so the short version of that is I wound up partnering with a former NBA player that played for the New Jersey Nets at the time. And how I got to Los Angeles was we launched a film finance company, believe it or not. So his brother was
Oh,
an
wow.
actor. His brother was an actor in LA. And he asked me would I, look into investing in my brother's film. And so I flew out to Los Angeles here to meet with his brother. And I thought through some other consultants that it probably wouldn't be the best thing to do, investing in films. But as a result of that, about a year later, we decided that there was an opportunity to invest in films, short, the not the high budget films. And so about a year later, I resigned from TIAA, and we opened up an office here in Los Angeles at Studio City at Universal City Walk. And that's really what started my career in Los Angeles. And then from there, I was able to build some really good relationships with some high net worth individuals in the film side. And that's kind of how I got started in Los Angeles, from New York to Los Angeles.
That's fantastic. So going from the investment world to the Hollywood, film stars, and then to the athletes, I think that's a really interesting, sort of uh, career trajectory, and sort
Yeah.
of adding the value from a financial standpoint. I think that's really interesting. We sort of share the New York background. So I think we have that in common.
That's right.
But
That's right.
having said that, I want to better understand what kind of services you focus on, especially through Wealth Capital Network. Um, you know, Working with the public markets and advising people on what they should and should not invest in is a pretty well understood science, I think, at this point. But I think what you do is not. So tell me a little bit more about the type of service the investors sort of look for when they come to you.
Yeah. So to your point, we don't really get into advising clients. I like to say that Wealth Capital Network, we're kind of the referee on the field. So we don't play
Oh,
for either
okay.
side, right? So
Got it.
that's what's nice about us. And that's why we're very much athlete friendly, because we don't push one company or another service. We don't do that. What we claim to do and focus on is providing best in class organizations on our platform. So basically, it's a multi-investor platform where early stage companies look to meet with certain types of investors, whether they be angel or family office or venture capital. And we create a platform where we know we're having the best in class organizations that we can align either the company or the fund or the athlete with. So right now we have what we call the Athlete Venture Forum, which really focuses on pairing athletes with family offices, or maybe there's some really co-investment opportunities that the athlete may not be seasoned in a certain area of investment, but they can co-invest alongside another family. So it's really about helping the athletes, educate them about the different investment opportunities that are out there. And for those that they may not be familiar with, they can always align themselves with someone or a family office or another angel investor that is a little bit more savvy and maybe has a lot more education about the space that they're in. So that's the Athlete Venture Forum. Then we also have an area where we focus with fund managers. So fund managers are looking to raise capital. We have several families, particularly family offices, that are looking to invest in areas that they may not be as seasoned with, but they would also like to work with a group who has a certain level of expertise in that space. So they might be willing to invest in that particular fund or some sort of a unique micro fund. So we deal with micro funds. We deal with some that are a little bit more later stage funds that maybe have 50 to 100 million AUM. And then there's some emerging managers that we're working with as well. So the real goal of Wealth Capital Network is to really say that we try to work with the best-in-class organizations, aligning them with other best-in-class individuals or groups so that they can come together and have an opportunity to generate business or explore investment opportunities.
Perfect. So that's such an interesting mission, and I love your analogy of being sort of more of a referee than an advisor on either end. I think that speaks volume of how much trust and people place in you and your organization. So that's amazing. Now we've talked about the athlete side, the investor side, but let's also talk about the startups and the organizations that are actually coming onto your platform. What are those organizations like? What sort of companies do you like to work with?
So I guess it's sort of a generalist platform where some of the sectors that we like to focus on is healthcare, primarily healthcare. We get a lot of IoT. We get some life sciences. That's a unique area of investment. Usually investors have a certain expertise in that space. So healthcare, IoT, I would say even e-commerce. We get some e-commerce as well. Generalist platform, the key for us is really preparation. So whatever the industry is, what we do is we work with them with their pitch deck. We'll try to queue it up or tailor it to what the investor is going to be looking for, as opposed to just coming in with a pitch deck and presenting it. We feel that our job is to make sure that we do our investors justice by doing proper organization of the deck, making sure that they know exactly what they're looking for, and we will tailor it that way. Most companies won't know our investors. I know them for the most part. So it's my job to make sure that I properly prepare them so I don't waste the investor's time, and I certainly don't waste the company's time. So that's kind of the model that we use. And that goes for funds as well. We see a lot of funds too, but the job for us is to make sure that we properly review the deck and make sure it matches up well with what the investors are looking for. And then we're able to better identify investors that we can put them in contact with. We're now sort of branching out with global investors now. So for a long time, we're focusing on domestic investors, and now we're working with some of the international families or global families. So we have a couple of events coming up where we'll be dealing with, we'll be working with companies in the international level. Dubai, for example, is coming up in November. So we're trying to expand that investor base because many of those investors on the international side are always looking for companies to invest in on the US side. So we're trying to bring those groups together for unique investment opportunities as well. So kind of goes both ways.
Fantastic. As far as the organizations go, the companies that are sort of the targets of these investments, any sort of focus on size of the company? Do you want them very early on, sort of middle level scaling? What do you like to see as far as the size of the organization goes?
Yeah, that's a good question. So typically we're dealing with pre-seed. We're obviously early stage companies, pre-seed. Some are in revenue. We usually go up to about Series A in terms of our investor network. So
Got it.
We don't usually go beyond that unless we can make some strategic relationship. But in general, we're looking at early stage, pre-seed, all the way up to Series A. We're looking for, good management. It's one of the things that I focus. I'm really a big, strong focus on companies because, it's the jockey and the horse analogy. You can
Yep.
have a great CEO, which is the jockey, and a bad horse, which would be the company, or vice versa. So both have to be in sync. You have to have a good jockey and a good horse to win a race. And you're going to need good management and a good company to be successful in raising capital. So that's kind of our
Absolutely.
philosophy on
That really well said. That's the idea, right?
Yeah.
uh, yeah. So just to dig in a little bit more on that front, when a company does come to you, what are the sort of things that you look for to see if this is a good horse, if this is a good jockey, and obviously the team and the strategy and all of those things. Where do you like to focus on?
I like to focus on, as I mentioned earlier, I like to focus on management, but I also like to focus on, especially if it's a pre-revenue company. I put a lot of emphasis on traction and development to date. Because if you don't have revenue, you've got to have something that will send a message to the investor that this is a really unique or really good opportunity to invest in. I have a saying that I've always said this to many of the companies that I work with, that you're really never, when you're raising capital, you're never really asking the investor for capital. What you're really doing is you're offering the investor an investment opportunity to make money with you. And there's a difference. So if you're
Yep.
asking somebody for money, you get a different response versus telling someone, hey, I have this great opportunity. We can make a lot of money together. We can be very successful. That sends a different message to an investor versus asking them for money. And a lot of times companies come across, or founders will pitch as if they're asking for money. No, you're sharing an investment opportunity so that you can both be successful. And that's a certain mindset that I think founders and CEOs have. So we try to help them with that. We also look for the target market. What is this market? What's special about this market? There's a difference between a want and a need. Many people need a lot of things, but do they really want it? And so when companies are presenting, I always say, you can talk about there's a want for this in this particular industry, but do people really, rather there's a need, but do people really want it?
Right.
So that's important to emphasize, not that there's just this great opportunity, but do people really want it? And that's something to think about. So we're looking at the market. We're looking at another area that we look at is how are they using the funds? What does the use of funds look like? In other words, does the use of funds, how does that go towards generating the business or building or growing the business? Not just given sort of, we're going to put 30% into management and 20% into marketing. How does that translate to business growth, the use of funds? That's what investors want to see. If I'm going to write you a check for $1 million, I appreciate you letting me know where it's going to go, but how does that accelerate the growth of the company? What does that do? You know what I mean? So that's also a big area that we look at. So those are kind of the three really focuses that we really focus on. And then, so there's some other aspects to the company that we look at, but those are the key areas that we really try to emphasize that becomes more refined, basically.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, that's fantastic. Now, give me an idea of what your process looks like. You said, you obviously work with them on the documentation, pitch deck, et cetera, to make sure they're ready for the investors. But as far as, due diligence, sort of understanding the company, what does your process look like?
Yeah, so a company provides us with usually we'll have a conversation. We'll probably have a 30-minute, maybe 45-minute conversation just to understand what is the business model. And number one, is there even a fit within the Wealth Capital Network to help facilitate the opportunity, right? So that's the first step. We want to first see, okay, what is this all about? And it also gives me a chance to meet the founder and just get a feel for who they are. You're not going to learn a whole lot in 30 minutes or 45, but you can get sort of the essence of this person. Do they really know their space? How experienced are they in this area? There's certain things that you can pick up, characteristics you can pick up, even in a 45-minute call, right? So usually that's the first step. Let's make sure there's even a fit that we might be able to assist you. Once we determine, yeah, there is a fit, then we'll do the deck review. So we'll go through slide by slide, making sure that we understand what your focus is, and then we're also understanding how we're going to curate this. So who are the right investors that we want to put you in contact with? Yeah, we have, hundreds of investors, but not all of them are interested in your particular space, right? So we need to go through that process of curating. Once we curate that, then typically what we do is we have affiliates like iCFO, for example, that we might put them on that platform where they'll get in front of, maybe 50, 60 investors on. Right now we're doing Zoom calls. We're not doing live. We used to do live. So we might set them up on our investor conference where they'll have a chance to present in front of, 30, 40, 50, 60 investors every month. We have that feature. But then we also do one-on-one meetings with the clients. So once they engage with us, we'll not only allow them to present in front of the entire group of investors, but we will schedule and arrange one-on-one investor meetings. And we have a team that does just that. So they're contacting the investors. They're not pitching the company per se to the investors, they're just sharing an executive summary of the company. And then the investor can decide if that's something they want to learn more about. And then what we do is we will schedule that call between the founder and the investor. So we manage their calendar for them, their scheduling. We handle all that for them. Because I always say this, and I may have said this to you, Davo, I've never met one founder or CEO who loves raising capital. I've never met one who says, I can't wait to raise capital again. Nobody wants to do it, right? But you have to. So it's much easier for them to just simply have somebody to really outsource that, right? We're really sort of it's kind of an outsourced business development in some ways, where you don't have to worry about going out and identifying investors. That's what we do. We have the relationships. So it takes a lot of weight off the founders, spending a lot of time as opposed to running the business. Now they've got to search and look for investors. So they find it to be a real joy to work with us because we take that burden off of them. And all they have to do is really be prepared to present their opportunity.
That's awesome. Yeah. And a lot of times setting up those meetings is the toughest part, right? Going back and forth, trying to match up calendars, all of those kinds of things. So the fact that you're able to take that burden off of the founders, I think saves a lot of heartache. And founders, they have to focus on what we want them to focus on, right? Which is to grow their business. So that's fantastic. So now let's say that you are able to set up the meetings, the meetings are successful, they get an investment. What kind of sort of follow up, and how do you continue to work with those organizations to make sure that investment is successful?
Yeah, so basically we're sort of the platform, right? So we don't get involved in success fees or anything like that. We don't. Sometimes companies have gotten funded through our relationships, and we never know. Sometimes, right? Sometimes they let us know, sometimes they won't. We don't really track them in that way. Sometimes the investor will call us and say, "Hey, look, I invested in a certain company." So really, once they come on the platform, our role is to help prepare them and help identify the right types of folks or investors that they would need to meet with. And sometimes, usually it's a 30-day type engagement that we'll have with them. But we'll do all the follow-up to make sure that those introductions are properly, handled, or make sure that they've had those meetings. We'll do follow-up with the investors in case. Sometimes a company may say, look, I've been trying to reach out to this investor, I can't get a hold of them. So we'll do things like that. But once they spend about 30 days with us, and we'll know, usually within 30 days, we have a good idea whether or not we're going to be able to help this company with the right types of investors they want to meet with. So basically, they come on the platform, we help prepare them, we help with the introductions. And if there's anything that we need to do additionally, we can certainly follow up with them just to make sure that they had how did everything go? So we do follow with them in that respect to make sure that things went well. Sometimes they're successful, sometimes they're not, but we still want to be able to make sure that they had a good experience with us. And that's the most important thing.
Absolutely.
That's important. So we do follow up in that respect.
That's fantastic. Now, as long as you're working with the companies for that 30-day period, what are sort of the other services? We talked about, helping them prepare for the actual meeting with the investor. Are there any additional services that you sort of help them with if they need to get their financials in order, or if they need to get, their go-to-market strategy in order? So any other services
Yeah.
that you get involved with?
That's a good question. I'm glad you brought that up because I kind of forgot about that. So basically, we have what we call value beyond capital, right? So value beyond capital means that we're not just helping to make those introductions for them, but we're also looking in other ways that we can help build or scale their business. So there may be some strategic relationships that we can bring. So for example, if a company is in a certain sector, and we may have VCs or we may have other angel groups who also have maybe portfolio companies in that same sector, they could become a great strategic alliance for the startup company getting into that sector. So it's not just all about capital introductions. Where else can we help this business be successful? Maybe it's through certain introductions on the business development side. So we do a lot of that, and we partner with other angel groups and other networks, both in the venture capital space, in the family office space. So we're always looking at what your sector is and who else do we have in our network that's in that sector, so that we can make those introductions as well. If the founder is interested in meeting other folks that can help grow their business outside of the capital side, then we're also offering that service as well. And then finally, too, on that note, there's another service that we do, that we work with another group that focuses on really how to present to investors. You can have the greatest business model, but if you don't know how to present it well, it's not going to go across well, right? So we have groups that we can send them to that can help train them on how to make a good presentation. If your financials need to be adjusted, we don't do that. iCFO used to do that to some degree, maybe still, but not as much anymore. That's where the CFO came from. It was really CFOs. So it was a group of CFOs that formed that company, and all of us have that background to some degree. But that's something that we decided that maybe we should farm out to others who just do that. So we may get a company that's the financials need to be adjusted a little bit or tweaked, so we can introduce them to someone who can help them do that exclusively. So those are different services. So it's not just capital introduction, it's helping them with their deck. In fact, we have groups that need a new pitch deck or need a revised pitch deck. We have certain folks that we work with who just do pitch decks. Right, so we'll put them in contact with them. We'll put them in contact with them as well. So we try to really, from the ground up, help startups from the very beginning all the way up to capital introduction, providing services for them.
Absolutely, and there are so many facets to sort of what you guys do. It's really pretty amazing. So if there are any startups out there that are looking to connect with Michael or are looking to connect with Wealth Capital Networks, we have all of the contact information, everything in the description. Obviously, you can create your profile on Startup Steroid, and we'll make sure Michael gets access to that. So lots of ways to connect with him. But Michael, I'm going to end the interview with the same question that I ask every investor that comes on here, and that is, what is the action step that the founder who's listening needs to take today? So needs to take before they get on the phone with you or send you that first email.
I would say, make sure you have a clear understanding or a clear idea of what your business model is. That's so important because so often, especially in the startup stage, we meet so many people, and I'm sure you do as well, Dava. You meet so many of these wonderful founders. They're smart, but sometimes their idea is not a business. It's more of a hobby versus a business, or it's structured not like a business, but more like a hobby. So what I try to say is at least have your deck. It's not going to be 100%, but at least have a good sense of what your business model is. Not just your idea, or not just the product or the service that you're presenting. What is the business around that? I'll give you a real quick example. So let's say, for example, your business is the NFL. Or football players, right? So the NFL said, okay, our product is the player, right? Our product, the NFL says our product is the player, And if our players are really good, they're going to generate revenue. They're going to, for owners that come in for stadiums, et cetera. So what is the NFL's model? Part of it is we have to always put a good product on the field, and that's going to be incumbent upon owners to build great organizations. And then that business model, we're going to take that model and we're going to try to get television revenue as a result of that, because the networks say, okay, great, you got a great product, we'll put it on our network, right? And then they say, okay, that's great. Then we're going to do merchandising, right? We're going to do NFL merchandising. Every team will have their own merchandise. So that's the business around football. That's the business model. In short, that's the business. I mean, it's much more involved than that. But the point I'm making is it has to be more than just a great product or service. What is the business model around that product or service? That's very important.
Absolutely. That's an amazing insight, because a lot of people feel that, if you're developing an IT product, like that's your business. It really isn't. That's just the, step one. You have to think about all of the other things that go with it.
That's right.
Really
That's
well
right.
said.
Right.
Any final thoughts to leave the founders with?
Yeah, I think lastly, I would say this to the founders that may be listening to this. Most founders that we see in the early stage rounds, early stage company rounds, some who have raised money have mostly raised money through friends and family. I call that I love you money. Because whether you win or lose, I'm still going to love you because you're my nephew, you're my son, you're my mom, whatever the case might be.
Right.
So they may have had success in that, which is great, because most times startup companies, it will come from friends and family for the most part, right? They're going to bet on you because they care about you. They believe in you. But when you get to the round of folks like us, Startup Steroid, Wealth Capital Network, you're dealing with a little bit more of a savvy investor versus a friends and family investor. So there's certain things that they're going to look for that you may not be aware of. So that's why it's so important to reach out to groups like yourself, Startup Steroid and Wealth Capital Network, because we have an understanding of what they're looking for, and we want to prepare you for success. So we want you to be successful, because when we engage you, you kind of represent us when you go before investors, because they will say to me, hey, Michael, why didn't you do X, Y, and Z with this company? So we're all one team at that point, and we want you to be successful. So to the founders, we look for your success. We need early stage companies. We love all the new technology that's coming into this in different marketplaces. So we're here for you, and we want you to be successful. That's my final thought.
That's fantastic. And that's a great message to leave us with and leave the founders with. Thank you so much for coming on today, Michael. I really appreciate your time. And let's continue the conversation. Yep, absolutely. I think we have a lot of deals that we're going to work on together over the next couple of weeks. You've already sent me a bunch of companies, so I'm really excited to get started. Thank you so much for doing the interview, and I look forward to speaking with you soon.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Appreciate it.